Jerry John Rawlings, after ruling Ghana for 19 towards 20th year, he handed over power. He ruled Ghana 12 years as a dictator, but nobody is ever to say he was a dictator. But they could call Kwame Nkrumah a dictator. For someone to rule for so long in African country, you know what the West have gained from the individual. They will not allow you to rule for so long. Period. Mobutu Sese Seko ruled Congo Democratic Republic for over 30 years, and they massively amassed wealth from Mobutu Sese Seko's country and rendered the people poor. Congo is a country that can feed the whole Africa, but they were rendered poor because of Mobutu Sese Seko. He was a dictator, but they don't want people to say they were dictators. He ruled for so long, and he knew what he was giving to the West for him to maintain himself in power. So Rawlings also succumbed to them later on and stayed in power. After 12 years, they moved the country back into civilian rule. Based upon this, Jerry John Rawlings resigned from the military and became a civilian, formed a political party, and won. So he won twice. So eventually, he almost ruled Ghana for 20 years, but we will say 19 years. Getting to his 20th years, he handed over to President John Kofi Adjekum-Kufuor, the second John. He handed over power to him. What is this guy going to do? This guy comes from bourgeois Damquest tradition. These are the group who have been opposing Kwame Nkrumah. Now they have the power again after Professor Bourgeois. This is the group that had always disturbed Jerry John Rawlings from the very beginning. And from the University of Ghana, Legon, there was a professor called Professor Edubuahim, often called Kukurudu. They disturbed Rawlings' government a lot. And this is where John Adjekum-Kufuor comes from. So he won the election and came to office. But when he came to office, we're going to examine his economic approach. The first thing this guy did to salvage the economy was to make the city portable. He canceled the zeros, all the zeros, and made the city 90 pesos to $1. So eventually the city came to be 1-to-1 with the dollar. Though it is 1-to-1, but the value was not the same like 1-to-1 during Kwame Nkrumah's time. So at this point we will say 1 out of 10,000 of $1. That is the real value of the city. But let's say it is 1-to-1. So now Ghanaians are going to start life afresh. Was it a magic to the city? We will see that later. But that was a great thing he has done, to remove these zeros to make Ghanaian cities more portable, because during Jerry John's era, people count the cities in millions. Well, I got 10 million. I got 50 million. I got 1 million. And what was the value of a million? The value of a million is just $100. So now Adjekum-Kufuor came and canceled the zeros and made it 1-to-1 with $1. which is a good thing he did. Then he moved on to the second point. His second approach was about debt reduction. Debt reduction. Jerry John Rawlings and his people has put Ghana into too much debt. So President Ajay Kufuor took Ghana to HIPC, heavily indebted poor countries. So now Ghana is a poor country. Ghanaians didn't know that. They are now poor. During Nkrumah's time, Ghana had money and could even loan money to other countries. So, if Ghana could loan money to other countries, how did Ghana come to a point of being poor? So, by taking Ghana into HIPC, had revealed the economic position of Ghana. So Ghana had become a poor country. But guess what? IMF and World Bank are not philanthropic organizations. So how can Kufuor succeed? They know what they have got from the system. So eventually, they came to forgive Ghana. Guess what? They forgave Ghana out of $66 billion. They allowed Ghana to own only $23 billion, which means they have forgiven Ghana $43 billion. An organization which is not a philanthropic organization can forgive Ghana that money if they haven't made profit out of you. Would they give you that money? But let's take, it came to be true under Kufuor's era. 65% reduction of debt. This could have been the highest achievement of President Kufuor. That Ghana's debt has been reduced only to $23 billion. But just imagine $23 billion. New York City budget, they can pay that $23 billion in a month. But Ghana owns $23 billion, find it difficult to pay because Ghana has been put into a very poor position. Ghana is now a poor country. So Kufuor did that for Ghana. And Ghana have been reduced, Ghana's debt has been reduced to $23 billion instead of $66 billion. Now his third move is to determine whether Ghana has to get away from pure capitalism or which system of economics are they going to apply. Are they going to apply free market system as Rawlings have introduced into the country? Or they are going into mixed economy? Or into a command economy? Command economy is like Cuba, Russia, China, and then the mixed economy is what the European countries had moved on to. So Kufuor came, but the problem here is he comes from the Dankwa bourgeois tradition. So more or less, they were also capitalists. He moved privatization of Jerry John Rawlings to the zenith. He moved privatization to the zenith and started privatizing companies in Ghana. To the extent that there was a time, there was a national forum on the sales of Ghana waters. And with this forum that debated on water. Ghana's water was to be sold. The urban waters have to be sold. And 5 companies bid for it. But the 5 companies that bid for the position of controlling the waters, each of them have annual sales which was larger than the GDP of Ghana. So Kufuor moved privatization to the highest level. Therefore, he was not different from Jerry John Rawlings when it comes to the economy. The only thing he did was reduce only the zeros. It's not magic, it's the same value. So if Ghana can maintain that for a very long time, then we will say Ghana has been able to build up. So he canceled the zeros and eventually moved Ghana to HIPS and got debt reduction. But on the privatization, they kept on selling Ghanaian asset. Selling Ghanaian asset. The government was selling asset for its operations. When the loans were reduced, the IMF and World Bank also advised him to use the loan money for education and health. Education and health. So they started to build on that. But the money was not to be used for production. If you produce and you can sell, yes, your value increases. But services like education and health, that area is good, but it's not adding up to other investment. So Kufuor here, therefore, ended up as Jerry John Rawlings II in terms of the economic model. They move on rudimentary capitalism. Rudimentary capitalism that has been practiced by America in the 1750s. And because of the existence of slavery, they waited until the slavery was abolished, and then it was fully practiced. They reached the highest level in 1890s. By 1930s and 1940s, they started to move away completely from 100% capitalism. But now Ghana is crawling from rudimentary capitalism. When are they going to move to the highest level of capitalism to the extent of moving into mixed economy? So Kufuor also have ended in terms of privatization like Jerry John Rawlings. So Ghana is still not having asset. Everything is being sold. The chiefs are selling lands to foreigners, and the government too are selling government assets to foreigners. That is the problem facing Ghana today. The youth are crying for jobs, but you don't have any job. The only job the government has is police, military, some education services, the nurses. Apart from that, in the industries, most of them had collapsed. If not, it had been sold. So the private sector had to do better in employing more people. If the private sector is not employing more people, then unemployment will go higher and higher. Most people become obese. So that is the problem today. The government has no asset to invest in a new project because all the assets are being sold. Jerry John Rawlings and his people did it, and Kufuor came and continued. So that is the trend of affairs in Ghana today. John Agyekum Kufuor started very well, but on the economic trend, he moved on the same way as Jerry John Rawlings, by high-level privatization. Therefore, the two in economic model are the same. President John Kofi Adjei-Kufuor handed over power to John Evans Atta-Mills, Professor John Evans Atta-Mills, the third John. We have Jerry John Rawlings, John Kofi Adjei-Kufuor, then now we have John Evans Atta-Mills. John Evans Atta-Mills comes from Rawlings' camp. He has been a vice president to Jerry John Rawlings. So now when he comes to office, is he going to follow the same way Rawlings did? Or is he going to follow what Kufuor too have done? We are going to examine his economic approach and see which of the government have really put Ghana so low economically that for Ghana to rise up is a major problem today. John Atta-Mills' first attempt, first of all, he had declared himself a social democrat. Wow. He declared himself a social democrat? Why? He had come from Jerry John's camp. The first social democrat would be Kwame Nkrumah. The second social democrat in terms of civilian elected presidency would be Dr. Hillary Mann. And now this guy is declaring himself a social democrat, a third in the line of being a social democrat. And social democrats believe in welfare economy. Welfare economy is mixed economy. So is he going to bring Nkrumah's welfare economy that the people who are behind Ghana's economy or the organizations behind Ghana's economy is World Bank and IMF? How is he going to do it? This guy was doing it through unconfrontational approach. Comparing him to Nkrumah and Jerry John Rawlings in terms of speeches, this guy was a different guy altogether. What he did, first of all, he reduced the inflation rate. Inflation came to 8.4% from 18.1%. Inflation came down as a result of 42-year-old. For 42 years, inflation has been rising up from 1970 all the way up. Inflation never came down. But this guy brought inflation down to 8.4%. And that was a great achievement under John Evans Atta-Mills. Now, as a result of this, his second move was currency stabilization. That has been a very difficult topic in Ghana. Currency stabilization. Ghana had not seen a relative stabilization since 1982, when Dr. Hillary Mann was overthrown. Because when Busia made the cedi up to 2 cedis 80 pesos to $1, none of the subsequent government devalued the currency until Jerry John Rawlings came the second time in 1982. And since 1982, the currency had never been stabilized. This guy, Atta-Mills, stabilized the currency. And in 2011, it was stated that Ghana was the most growing economy in the world, because the first half of the year, the economy grew 20.15%. And getting to the second half of the year, it was 14.4%. Averagely, which is about 17% growth overall. So Ghana became the most growing economy in the world because of the currency stabilization. And this analysis was given by IMF and economicwatch.com that Ghana has become the most growing economy in the world. The next thing he did was to go to national debt deficit. This is something Americans even cannot solve that problem. But this guy moved into deficit reduction and to a great job. He reduced the deficit to 2% of the gross domestic product, GDP, compared to 14.5% of GDP in the previous year. In 2008, it was 24.64%. 2009, it was 26.79%. And 2007, it was 22.55%. And this guy reduced the deficit down to 2%. This was a great achievement. Upon this, the gross international reserves and foreign direct investment highlighted exceptional macroeconomic performance under President Atta Mills. This guy is doing something for Ghana. In terms of wages and salaries, the single spine salary system led to increase of compensation level of all workers, which was so great in Ghana. Then he brought about efficiency in revenue collection. If Ghana is now a capitalist country, then there must be an effective revenue collection. If not, the Ghanaian government will not be able to function very well. Upon this, he established revenue authority, which integrated value-added tax called VAT. Number 2, custom excise and preventive service, CEPS. And number 3, Internal Revenue Service, IRS. So all these 3 organizations or financial setup was able to collect enough money for the government. Based upon this, with the introduction of the common currency called ECHO, if it was to be established, then Ghana was able to meet 3/4 of the criteria being analyzed by ECHO organization, West African Economic Organization, ECOWAS. Now, based upon this, domestic and foreign investors' confidence increased. And as a result, he moved into agriculture. This is going to be spectacular in Ghanaian history. Agriculture, the price of cocoa. To the surprise of everybody, the price of cocoa went up to 1,600 per ton. This was a great thing in Ghana. It has never happened in Ghana. The cocoa price will go up to that level. And based upon that, there was a record high of cocoa production to a record high of 1 million metric tons. How did it happen? Because cocoa is a kind of plant that cannot be produced in advance in a year. So how did it happen? With the price increase, it means Ghanaians were not smuggling their cocoa to Ivory Coast. By not smuggling cocoa to Ivory Coast, they now can sell to the Ghana government. That's how the cocoa production increased. Not that because it will take 3-4 years if you plant a cocoa. So how the production rose to that level? It means the Ghanaians were no longer smuggling cocoa out, and rather preferred the price given to them. And that was a good thing in Ghana. Arthur Mills did that. Then also, when it comes to electricity coverage, Ghana moved from 54% to 72%, making Ghana the third in energy assets in his time. He also made some political adjustment that brought some financial benefit to the country. He reduced the number of ministers, the ministerial appointment. He reduced the number of ministers by 16%, which means he moved from 87 to 73, 16% reduction. And what was the impact of this? He saved Ghana $4 million every year. $4 million every year was saved. If this money is to be channeled to produce even konkonte or any other products in Ghana, that will eventually move the economy up. It will boost up the local population in terms of investment. $4 million was saved by his structural adjustment politically. That was a great thing. You know what? When oil has been founded under President Kufuor, when oil was found under Arthur Mills, they started to drill the oil. But this guy was shrewd, very shrewd. You know what he did? This guy established a heritage fund from oil and gas industry. A heritage fund that will help the future generation of the country. He wasn't thinking about himself going to make investment where he and his people will get money. No, he put the money down for the future generation. Heritage fund. He also funded the Media Development Fund to promote media excellence. This guy was thinking about the future of the country. In 2010, Arthur Mills rebased the economic statistics by adjusting and using recent claim data. The GDP, therefore, increased more than 60%. By increasing or improving the data for analyzing GDP, Ghana came to have 51% in the service sector, 30.2% in agriculture, and 18.6% in industries, which means with the privatization of Jerry John Rawlings and Kofi Ajakum Kufuor, the industrial sector was going down. So it had 18.6%. But the service sector has been increasing. So we know Ghana GDP increased by 60% by that data adjustment. In this way, therefore, Ghana came to be known as a place to do business, according to World Bank Business Global Ranking. The best place to do business under Atta Mills. This guy was preparing Ghana toward the road of mixed economy, like the way Nkrumah had done. But when we say Nkrumah was controversial in his speeches, but this guy was doing it smooth without any controversy with anybody, was moving Ghana systematically towards mixed economy. But guess what? John Atta Mills eventually went to his origin of life while being a president. He went to his origin of life. So, a fourth John came into the scene. John Dramani Mahama has to take over to continue the rest of the time of Professor John Evans Atta Mills. So when Mahama took over and the term ended, he went for another election. And if he wins, what is he going to do? During the campaign of John Mahama, the fourth John, eventually there was a song that was played during the campaign. And on the video, you can see even Jerry John Rawlings and his wife were all enjoying the music. The title of the music was Sankofa. Sankofa means go back and take what you left. So is he going to follow his immediate predecessor, John Atta Mills, or is he going to follow his other predecessor, John Jerry Rawlings? This was the issue. When Mahama won the election, immediately he moved away from his immediate predecessor, John Atta Mills, and went to take in Jerry John Rawlings' approach. Immediately, the city started to depreciate. So the currency that had been stabilized now started to depreciate. That was the first attempt. Then on the path of privatization, he continued equally like John Ajekun Kufuor. He even went to the extent of extending some time of concessions to other people, like the Tema Harbor. He wasn't the one that sold it. It was Kufuor that sold it, but he came and increased the time for the one who bought that. So on the path of privatization, he is the same as the first John Jerry John Rawlings and the second John Kofi Ajekun Kufuor. John Mahama then took Ghana back into borrowing from IMF. And so now the debt of Ghana is going to increase again, while President Kufuor has begged them to reduce the debt, and the debt has come down. Now he took Ghana to IMF again. That is their savior, which means at this point, no president of Ghana can mobilize local resources to improve the economy. The only thing they got to do is to take the short way of going to IMF for loans to build the economy. And when you go in for the loans are not gifts. And so it will reflect on your currency. So the cedi, which was 1-to-1, started to be weakened once again. Then after 4 years of Mahama, though he might have done well in some areas like education and health, roads, those are sometimes advice given to them by IMF and World Bank. But in terms of the real economics, they are on the same wavelength. They have deviated completely from Kwame Nkrumah. But most people mention Kwame Nkrumah's name. Today, the Ghanaians, those who have observed very well, mention Nkrumah's name for being one of the best leaders in the country. But what he did, people are not following. They have deviated from it completely. Now, John Mahama did nothing different from Jerry John Rawlings and John Ajekun Kufuor. So after his term, he handed over to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was one talking to Otumfuo, and Otumfuo said, "You are now a grown-up man. You are not coming to amass wealth. You are coming to create a name for yourself, to do better for Ghanaians, to ensure Ghana move in a better direction." So Akufo-Addo promised the country. But some of his promises, people should have examined it carefully. He declared himself a conservative. And I don't know how many people really understand conservatism in terms of their practice. If you don't know conservatism, learn about American politics. I call the conservatives as custodians. They will come and take care of what has been established by progressives and progressive liberals. They will take care of it. The status quo, they will maintain it. But sometimes a conservative can pull you back. Something you have advanced to some level, they can pull you back. For example, President Walker Bush, George Walker Bush, he called himself compassionate what? Conservative. As a compassionate conservative, he nearly privatized Social Security. If Americans were not careful, he would have done it. He moved America to the level of privatizing its Social Security. But Social Security is to help disability misery and old age misery. And so America had got a solution for old age misery and disability misery. But conservative can turn it backwards. They can pull you back. So Nana Addo declared himself a conservative. Then he promised the people, one district, one dam, one district, one factory. And people were so happy about this. Why are you happy about this? One district, one dime, just ask yourself. Does every district in the country has large river like Volta River? If you have a large river in every district, then he can construct a dam. So if this is what you are voting for him, know that you are not well informed. And one district, one factory also is impossible, because every district should have resources where the factory can be built. So we cannot have one factory, one district. But he gave that promise. People voted for him because they have hope in Nana Addo. People were tired of other people, so then they have hope in Nana Addo. Because Nana Addo had struggled to become president of Ghana. And coming from Dankwa Bourgeois tradition, his own father had been a president under Bourgeois regime. And so, this guy, everybody knew he has a lot for Ghanaians. And he came to power. The first thing he did, the spoils belong to the victors. That is the claim by Andrew Jackson, the first conservative president of America. To the victor is the spoils. So, Arthur Mills reduced the ministers to save Ghana $4 million every year. But this guy created Zongo Affairs Ministry. Zongos are only from urban areas, not the rural areas, but he established that as a ministry. Nobody knows the rationale behind it, but the rationale behind it is to create some jobs for his people. And then the next thing he wanted to do is to build a cathedral, which has become a big issue in Ghana. Nana Addo Dankwa is not able to control the instability of the city. Today, the city is about 12 to $1. And even when I'm speaking, some people say it's about 15 to $1. The city that was reduced by Kufuor 1-to-1 is now 15 to $1. If it is so, what is the real value of the city when you compare to Rollins' time before it was cut down to 1-to-1? Which means today the city is 150,000 to $1. If it is 15 to $1, it is 150,000 to $1 under Rollins' regime before Kufuor reduced the zeros. So Nana Addo equally had not been able to stabilize the city. So Ghana is at the losing side. So if Ghanaians are suffering, they have to look at their financial sector. You work today, you save the money becomes worthless. Because the money is being devalued every day. So you don't have money at all. Now also, Nana Addo embarked on privatization. We have the Tema Harbor, the Tema refinery, but that refinery is not functioning, but there is a private refinery in the country. They are funding private enterprises in Ghana. So Nana Addo is also on the path of privatization. There's no difference. Jerry John Rawlings on privatization. Ajekun Kufuor on privatization. John Dramani Mahama on privatization. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo on privatization. There are no difference. So between Mahama and Akufo-Addo, a Hausa man will say Dukadaya, which means they are all the same. The Hausa word Dukadaya means they are all the same. There's no difference between them. The only difference is who are the ones following them and who are those to benefit when the person gets to power. But technically, on economic train, they are all the same. So, they are selling Ghana's wealth. They are selling companies. They are selling what Ghana has. So Ghanaians, it is time for you to look up carefully. Which way do you want to go? Do you want the government to involve itself in investing, or you want the government to stay back and then collect only taxes? Because if you are operating based upon taxes and tariffs, then as Kennedy said to Americans once before, he said, do not think about what America can do for you, but think about what you can do for America. So Ghanaians, if this is the route you are going, do not think about what the government would do for you, but what you would do for the government. But today, most Ghanaians are leaving the country. They want to go somewhere for a new life. Examine the situation carefully, because while people are moving out, foreigners are coming in. They are enjoying the economy. Why is it good for foreigners and it's not good for most Ghanaians today? The Chinese are coming in. When the Rawlings and other people took away subsidies, Chinese started to produce cloths. And they gained massively by using Ghanaian designs. Even the kente was borrowed, and they printed prints all over the world and made big money. That is privatization for you. Privatization. Now you're going to buy all the cheap products. So therefore, Ghanaians today, the government collect taxes, but don't expect much from the government, because the government can't do much for you. The government does not have investment. Therefore, the government doesn't have much job. If you're expecting the government to create jobs, the government cannot create jobs. The only thing is to expand the ministerial position, like they created the Zongo Affairs Ministry. That's all. And then they built cathedral. What is the meaning of the cathedral? Why is it so important? Nobody knows. They have their masters somewhere who are advising them to do that. And so therefore, building a cathedral, what kind of job is it giving to Ghanaians? You got to ask yourself. Now, the only hope for Ghanaians is to move to churches. Go and pray for so many hours. But that is not yielding the results. Prayer is good, but that is the only avenue left for you to console yourself. So Ghanaians are consoling themselves by going to church. And you know what? Most religious people have learned psychology. They know how to trick the congregation sometimes. Not all of the pastors are genuine pastors, so they can trick the congregation. And even the little they got, they can squeeze out of them and become rich. Even though, as pastors, they are saving souls, they are consoling people, but some of them are exploiting the situation because the Ghanaians don't have jobs. So they go and pray that God will help them to get money. Some of them even have become money creators. They don't have jobs. People are suffering today. What are they going to do? There are many universities, both government and private. And so many graduates are coming out. But where is the job? Are you waiting for the government to create jobs for you? In capitalism, you have to create your own job. Sometimes, a graduate student from any of the universities can come out and stay for about 4 years without a job, even though highly professional. But guess what? They should also know, even in America and other places, some people have Ph.D.s and they don't still get job, but they are able to live by adjusting themselves to do something for themselves. So now it is up to Ghanaians to do something for themselves because the government is not going to do anything. So at this point, Ghana is getting into election time. We have from Nana Addo Dankwa's government, or Nana Addo Dankwa's part as Bawumia. And from Rawlings' side, we have Dramani Mahama once again. These two are campaigning to win your vote. They know you don't have money, so they will bring you t-shirts. And eventually, sometimes, bring you a little money. And you're going to go fight and vote for them. But believe me at this point, whether you vote for Mahama, whether you vote for Bawumia, the Hausa man will say Dukadaya. They are all the same. They are on the same path. Nobody is coming in like Atamios. Nobody is coming in as Kwame Nkrumah. And so on the same path, everything given to them is taken in total by the Western powers. If it is so, Ghana will continue to suffer if we don't add our own to what advice they give. Nana Addo Dankwa, therefore, people say he has disappointed Ghanaians, and Ghanaians have lost hope. But believe me, he's a conservative. In terms of conservative job, probably he has done his job. And sometimes people don't understand me when I say he has done his job. Yeah, he's a conservative. Learn what conservative can do. And that's what conservatives do. Very soon he'll be out of office. But the problem still hangs on. What are Ghanaians going to do so that they can become a model? Like the way they have been since Nkrumah's time. In Nkrumah's time, Ghana was a model to be emulated. And the whole African continent, all the countries that became independent, emulated Ghana. So today, what you have for these nations to emulate? Have you set a good example for them? You are going down and down every day. So what have you got for Africa? What have you even got for your own people, Ghanaians, and then to Africa? That's why today Ghanaian leaders are not talking big about Africa, because the domestic problem is so huge. Why? Because we have followed a path which is different from the Ghanaian way. So if Ghanaians want to shape their life, call the intellectuals who left the country out of fear of Jerry John Rawlings and his people to go back and see how to design something new for Ghana. There are solutions, but somebody will say, give some of the solutions. At this point, we cannot do that at this platform. Some of the solutions can be given. You know, we are ordinary critics. We are nobody. But if you do ask, sometimes we give it to you in your private chambers. If you take it, you take it. If not, then we are free from being blamed from other side, because while you are doing that, they are watching you. So you got to be careful. They are watching you. So for Ghana to be fully independent, you got to be independent politically and independent economically. Take yourself out of the control of World Bank and IMF. Take yourself out. And how do you do that? you are already in the game. It's not easy. What would you do to take yourself out? Ghanaians have to live. Cut their coat according to their size. There is much sacrifice to be done, but are they willing to sacrifice? Rather, most people want to go out and search for foreign currency and come to the country and live big at a time and they go back. People are not willing to stay in the country for so long. So therefore, Ghana need a better shape economically. They should look down. There's still money. Like Nkrumah said, the people of Ghana is poor. The people of Africa is poor. But Africa is not poor. Which means Ghana technically is not poor. From resources-wise, Ghana is not poor. But Ghanaians are poor. But Ghana is not poor. There is still hope. There is still hope. So let us hold our breath and see who will be the next leader of Ghana to be fully advised properly in order to move Ghana in a new path of economics. Long live Ghana, long live Africa.